Hello, in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about a paper that does well on the rubric that we're using for grading papers in this course. So, the paper is titled, this is a student paper from another intro class. De Holbach's Denial of Free Will. Many people in this world are still actually hard determinists, like those who believe that everything is according to the will of God, or that everything has a definite determining cause. After all, science is built upon causality, which means that for every action there is a cause, a reaction, or an effect. De Holbach believed that human free will did not exist because every single thing has a cause. This is an okay introductory paragraph. It's not fantastic. Why? Well, let me ask you. Do you know what a hard determinist is? Probably not. But besides that, we're being told we're going to learn about free will. We're going to learn about someone who says there's no such free will. We're going to learn about that because this person, de Holbach, thinks that every single thing has a cause. This introductory paragraph could do a little bit more to say, here's what the different pieces of this paper or of this exposition paper, or what the rest of the paper are going to be. But besides that, and the fact that it doesn't uses this phrase hard determinist, it's pretty good. Mostly easy to understand. We might worry, what exactly is a definite determining cause? According to de Holbach's Denial of Free Will, quote, human behavior is determined and therefore we lack free will, unquote, based on data from Minnesota State University 2010. Here is a diagram of de Holbach's argument. So the person who wrote this paper found Minnesota State University 2010 page online and found it helpful in talking about the paper, the subject. So that's fine. It was fine. They went out and found that, and they're guided by it, and they're telling us where they got it from. So part 1, proving that behavior is determined. 1, a human being is a material, i.e. physical thing. 2, all changes in material things are determined by immutable laws. Conclusion 1, all changes made by humans are determined by immutable laws. Looks good so far. We have this premise conclusion form, and it's broken into actually 2 parts. You don't need to do it in 2 parts for your paper, but it's okay if you do. Part 2, proving that humans do not have free will. 1, in order to be free, one's actions must be independent of physical causes. And 2, no human action is independent of physical causes based on conclusion 1. Here we're learning how this part relates to the previous part. Conclusion 2, no human action is free. So this is all pretty straightforward. We might want to know what an immutable law is, maybe what it means to be material or physical, what it means to be free. What would it mean to be independent of physical causes? So those are things we might want to learn about, but it's pretty clear what the argument is, what the claims in the argument are, even if we're not entirely sure what they mean. Before one can criticize the validity or reliability of the argument of de Holbach, there is a need to explain it. Okay, good. So now here, this is a structuring sentence. It's saying, okay, here's this argument. We're going to go on to criticize it, but first we're going to explain it. So that's an easy to read sentence, and it's helpful in organizing the paper and helping the reader know what's going on. The ultimate conclusion is that no human action is free, and in order to explain this, then human action must first be labeled as not free, since it is human actions that define the freedom. Now this, I'm not sure what this means. Human action must first be labeled as not free. Okay. Why? Human actions define the freedom. Why does that mean that human actions are first labeled as not free? So this sentence is confusing to me. If a person's actions are free or freely done, then the person must be free. That's easy to understand. Similarly, if a person's actions are not free or not freely done, then the person must not be free. So we're just saying, we're talking about actions and the person as a whole. The freedom of the actions and the freedom of the person go together. That's easy to understand. De Holbach proves first that all human actions and changes are determined by immutable laws or any stimulus. The purpose of this first part is to conclude in the end that all changes, including those made by humans, are causally determined by immutable laws. The first part of the Holbach's argument does not speak of freedom first, but establishes the absoluteness of causality, that causality affects everything. The first premise states that a human being... So here we're learning sort of what is it about the argument that's important, and we're learning, okay, this first argument is about how everything is caused. And we're going to learn why. The first premise states that a human being is a material or physical being. In particular, everything about humans is caused. This means that, as defined by science, the human being is a physical thing, which is something perceived by the five senses. Not sure that that's what physical means, but it's actually kind of hard to define what physical means. Actually, sometimes it's very hard to define our terms. In the end, we cannot always say in other words what our terms mean. Some of our words are primitive. Next, after de Holbach establishes that man is physical, he immediately concludes that man, by virtue of his physical nature, is subject to the immutable laws of nature, which are assumed to apply to all physical things. Thus, a physical man, just like all physical objects, is subject to the immutable laws of nature. Also, a physical man, as well as his actions and the changes in him, are also all subject to the immutable laws of nature. So this could be a little bit simpler because part of this is repetitive, this sentence here. But basically, I think so far that this paper has been pretty easy to read, right? The sentences are short, they're grammatically simple, and the structure of the paper is quite clear so far. Now there's something at this point and I've sort of nitpicked a few little things. One problem with this paragraph is you might say, okay, what are these immutable laws of nature that de Holbach and the person explaining de Holbach's argument are thinking about? That needs explanation, right? We would want to know what those are. And that's one way in which this paper is not perfect. And it actually turns out to be important to the paper because the criticism that this person later gives involves the immutable laws of nature. So I think that we're getting a sense of, okay, this is well organized. Each little paragraph has a point. We know, we get this sort of summary paragraph at the beginning. The arguments are put out in this nice premise conclusion form. We have these structuring sentences that say, okay, we're going to do this, but first we're going to do this other thing. So far, so good. And the paper continues in this vein. And so you might look at the rest of this paper because it continues to be a paper that is pretty easy to follow. There's some problems with its exposition of de Holbach's argument, and certain things are not explained, so it's not a perfect paper. But the paper is easy to read, it's pretty easy to understand, and does a fairly good job of explaining what de Holbach's... Well, there's some problems with how it explains de Holbach's view, but that's not what we're so concerned about. What we're concerned about for this purposes is what's the writing like, what's the organization like, and I think this is a good example of a paper that has good writing and good organization. Short sentences, simple sentences, short paragraphs. It's clear what the purpose of each paragraph is. There are transition sentences. So overall, it's good. There are some problems, as I said. That thing about immutability, what is an immutable law of nature, that's important and is not explained. But in general, it's a good paper. If you want to see what a paper that has good organization looks like, this is one to look at. Good writing, this is one to look at. In another video, we'll see what a paper that doesn't have that looks like.